Did you know trauma can be passed down through your DNA? This idea might sound like science fiction, but it's a reality that researchers are uncovering more about every year. Not just stories, actual biological changes. The experiences of your ancestors can leave a physical imprint on your genetic code, affecting you in ways you might never have imagined. Scientists have discovered that intense stress leaves chemical marks on genes, which can be inherited by future generations. These marks don't change the DNA sequence, but they do influence how genes are expressed. This means the fears and anxieties of your ancestors might be shaping your emotions and behaviors today, even if you've never experienced the same events yourself. It's called epigenetics, and it's changing how we understand family pain. This field is revealing connections between generations that go far beyond what we once thought possible. The struggles you face might not have started with you. They could be echoes of battles fought long before you were born. You could be carrying the emotional weight of your grandparents' hardships, war, poverty, or loss. Their pain may have left a mark that still lingers in your life today. That unexplained sadness or anxiety. It might be an echo from the past, a silent message passed down through generations. But understanding this is the first step toward freedom. When you recognize these patterns, you can begin to break the cycle. It's not about blame, it's about awareness. By learning the truth, you empower yourself to make new choices. Once you can name the problem, you can start to solve it. Healing begins with understanding, and every step forward matters. Today, we'll explore the story of the Blake family, a powerful example of how hidden wounds can fester for decades, and how facing the past can finally bring healing. Their journey shows us that hope and change are possible, no matter how deep the scars. Let's start the conversation. On the surface, the Blake family seemed fine. Robert, the patriarch, was hardworking but distant and critical. Mary, his wife, was the anxious peacemaker, always smoothing things over. Their children, Liam and Chloe, lived out the consequences. Liam struggled with anger and felt like a failure. Chloe became a people-pleaser, haunted by anxiety and self-doubt. The Blakes were disconnected. Family dinners were quiet, feelings unspoken, and an invisible wall kept them apart. They didn't realize their pain was a shared family secret, passed down and unaddressed. Each suffered alone, unaware that the key to their pain was buried in their family's past. The tension in their home was a silent legacy. They were a family of strangers, each carrying invisible wounds. What is generational trauma? It's a question that goes deeper than just personal pain. It's about the invisible burdens families carry across decades. Imagine your great-grandfather survived a war or famine, always on high alert, hiding his feelings to survive. The world he knew was dangerous, and he learned to protect himself by shutting down emotionally. He never talked about it, but his behavior changed. Distant, quick to anger, unable to show affection. His silence spoke volumes, shaping the atmosphere at home. His son, your grandfather, grew up learning that men don't show emotion and the world isn't safe. He absorbed these lessons not through words, but through daily life and subtle cues. These lessons weren't spoken. They were lived. Children watch, listen, and internalize what they see, even if no one ever explains why things are the way they are. Generational trauma is the silent echo of past pain, rippling through families. It's a legacy that's passed down, often without anyone realizing it. The original event fades, but the emotional wounds and coping mechanisms remain. Old photos may not show it, but the impact lingers in the way families relate to each other. Later generations experience anxiety, depression, or anger without knowing why. They're reacting to a wound that isn't theirs. The pain feels personal, but its roots are often hidden in family history. This isn't a conscious choice. It happens through learned behaviors, parenting styles, and even biology. Science now shows trauma can affect our genes, shaping how we respond to stress. A parent who never received comfort can't give it. Emotional distance becomes the norm, even when love is present. A child raised in fear may create a fearful home. The cycle repeats, shaping each new generation's sense of safety and belonging. The cycle continues, until someone learns how to heal. Healing starts with awareness and the courage to face what's been hidden. Generational trauma is pain that didn't get processed, but it can end with you. You have the power to change the story for yourself and those who come after. Understanding this is the first step to breaking the chain. Healing is possible, and it begins with recognizing the patterns that have shaped your family's story. For the Blakes, trauma began with Robert's father, Arthur, who grew up during the Great Depression. The world he knew was harsh and uncertain, shaping his beliefs about survival and strength. In those years, showing vulnerability was seen as a weakness, and Arthur learned to hide his fears behind a stoic mask. Arthur learned to suppress emotion and equated worth with hard work, never showing love to his son. He believed that providing for his family was enough, but the warmth of affection was always missing from their home. Robert inherited this fear of failure and emotional distance, passing it to his own children. He grew up believing that love was conditional, earned only through achievement and obedience. He pushed Liam and Chloe to succeed, but never talked about feelings, trying to make them strong but starving them of affection. The silence in their home was heavy, and the pressure to be perfect was constant. Liam saw his father's distance as rejection, fueling his anger and self-doubt. He struggled to understand why love felt so out of reach, and his frustration grew with every unspoken word. He repeated the pattern, pushing people away, living out an emotional blueprint set by a grandfather he barely knew. The cycle of isolation and longing continued, shaping his relationships and sense of self. Chloe tried to earn her father's love by being perfect, developing anxiety and people-pleasing habits. She believed that if she could just do everything right, maybe she would finally be seen and valued. She feared mistakes meant she was unworthy of love, carrying her father's unhealed wounds. The pressure weighed on her, shaping her every decision and relationship. Both siblings suffered from echoes of a trauma that began decades before they were born. The legacy of silence and emotional distance became their inheritance, shaping their lives in ways they could not fully understand. The pain was inherited, but invisible. It lingered in the quiet moments, in the spaces between words, and in the longing for connection that was never truly spoken. The breaking point came at Robert and Mary's 45th anniversary dinner. Liam made a sarcastic comment about Robert's priorities, shattering the fragile peace. Robert exploded in anger, but what followed was more shocking. Mary broke down in tears, crying, "This silence is killing us." For the first time, the family confronted their unhappiness. In the silence, Chloe asked, "Mom, why are we all so scared?" The question cut to the heart of their dysfunction. Robert finally spoke, "Because my father taught me that fear is all there is. You work or you starve." It was the most vulnerable thing he'd ever said. The fight was no longer father versus son. It was about a shared history of pain. The dam had broken, and healing, though painful, had begun. Sometimes it takes one honest moment to change everything. The Blakes had finally spoken the truth. The cycle was exposed. That disastrous dinner was the start of the Blakes' healing. Chloe suggested family therapy. Robert resisted. Liam was cynical, but Mary insisted. In therapy, they learned to speak the language of feelings. Robert shared memories of his father's hardship, helping Liam and Chloe see him differently, not as cold, but as wounded. Liam realized his anger was inherited, not just his own. For the first time, Robert listened without criticism, admitting he'd felt the same way. This vulnerability built a bridge between them. Chloe found her voice, explaining how perfectionism fueled her anxiety. Robert admitted his criticism was fear. He thought he was protecting her. Honest communication melted decades of misunderstanding. They weren't just talking, they were listening and seeing each other's pain. Empathy became their medicine. The healing had truly begun. If the Blake story resonates, you might wonder, how do you break the cycle? First, acknowledge the past. Talk to relatives. Look for patterns, anxiety, addiction, emotional distance. Understanding isn't about blame, it's about finding the source of the wound. Next, educate yourself. Learn about generational trauma. Books, podcasts, documentaries. Knowledge helps you separate your identity from inherited pain. Third, feel your feelings. Give yourself permission to experience sadness, anger, and fear. Therapy, journaling, and mindfulness can help you process and release stored trauma. Finally, consciously choose a new path. Practice open communication. Set boundaries. Show affection. If you have children, create emotional safety. Let them feel seen and loved. Every empathetic response, every honest conversation breaks the chain. Healing is possible, and you can start it. You can create a new legacy. The cycle ends with you. The Blakes' journey wasn't quick or easy, but something fundamental changed. The silence was gone. They now talked through conflicts instead of letting them fester. Robert learned to say, "I'm proud of you," and shared stories from his childhood. Liam worked on his anger in therapy, building a new relationship with his father. They spent time together, not as adversaries, but as family. Chloe's anxiety lessened as she set boundaries and learned her worth wasn't tied to perfection. She and Mary grew closer, supporting each other's healing. The Blakes created a legacy of communication, vulnerability, and resilience. Their home became a place of warmth and connection. By facing the past, they built a foundation of love for generations to come. The Blake family's story is a reminder. You're not alone. Millions carry invisible family pain, feeling anxious or lost without knowing why. Recognizing generational trauma is an act of courage, the first step toward healing. The journey requires support, guidance, and community. You have the power to break the cycle and start a new legacy. Every step you take is a gift to your ancestors and a promise to your descendants. You deserve a life not defined by the pain of the past. If you're ready, we're here to help. Subscribe to our newsletter for resources, strategies, and stories of hope. Let's turn your family's legacy of pain into a legacy of healing, starting now.